Hello and welcome to Ahval Podcasts, the home of objective, up-to-date and independent reporting on Turkey. Don't forget to follow our reports through social media, on ahvalnews.com or through our mobile app. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Talking Turkey. I'm Ahval editor David Lepeska, and with me on this Tuesday, November 26th, is Hüseyin Çiçek, research associate at the Erlangen Center for Islam and Law, and an analyst of Turkish immigrant communities in Austria and Germany. Thanks for joining us today, Hüseyin.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Some 2/3 of Germany's 4.5 million Muslims are of Turkish origin, and the Turkish Islamic Union for Religious Affairs, known as DİTİB, Germany's largest Islamic organization, was set up in 1984 as a branch of Turkey's Directorate of Religious Affairs called the Diyanet. It has since been disconnected officially from the Diyanet, but most still see it as run by Turkey. Today, DİTİB oversees some 900 mosques in Germany, for which the Turkish government trains and assigns imams. Tell me, what's the extent, in your view, of the Turkish government's influence in these DİTİB mosques and in mosques run by a similar body, ATİB, in Austria?
Well, that's a it's a complex issue. First of all, as you just mentioned, due to the 2.5 million or more Turkish citizens living in Germany, these are very, very important constituencies for Turkish government. So when there is an election in Turkey, Erdogan and the AKP also tries to gain their votes. So it is not only, the issue is not only with the Diyanet, it's not only with DİTİB, it's a more complex socio-political challenge. So the Turkish community in Germany created ties with Turkey from the first moment they migrated into Germany, and those connections were getting stronger and stronger through history. So from the 1963 till today. So and the Diyanet is one of the political actors who tries to influence the Turkish community through religious teachings, and also to bring them back online to agree to the politics of the AKP and so on. But we have to keep in mind that the Diyanet was created in 1924 as an institution to support the Turkish government's view on religion. So the Diyanet is doing exactly what it was created for. It tries to keep the Turkish citizens all over the world, not only in Germany, in line with the Turkish government's political actions.
Speaking of Turkey's reach and influence in Germany, Berlin's Şehitlik Mosque, just a couple miles from where I sit right now, officially stands on Turkish territory, on a plot of land gifted to the Ottomans by King Wilhelm years ago. On Monday, yesterday, a German far-right extremist group emailed a bomb threat to the mosque, according to Anadolu, Turkey's state-run Anadolu agency, which said there'd been dozens of such threats in recent months. The Turkish General Council in Berlin described the threat as an attempt to disrupt peace and social cohesion. In your view, among German citizens, and perhaps among Austrians as well, what's the level of animosity toward Turkish and Muslim immigrant communities? Are hate crimes like this on the rise as the far-right anti-immigrant party, AfD, has gained popularity?
Well, according to several reports, enmity against Muslims, and in that case also against Turkish Muslims, is rising in Europe, in parts of Europe. Some people call this development or Islamophobia. So, I think we have to take those developments very serious. But on a larger scale, there is, if you look at on a larger scale, we have those kind of developments, violent developments on the extreme right and on the extreme left, and also in the fundamental religious corner. So these are developments which are somehow representing the Zeichen unserer Zeit. I don't know how to say that in English right now, because I don't know if there is a phrase for that. It's a sign of our time, being extremist on religious or political right, left corner. So the threats, I think we have to take the threats very, very seriously. And those threats are also, we have to take those threats very seriously, because enmity against Muslims or Turkish people is rising, and because Turkish people are very successful in Germany. I mean, they are they're part of the economy. They have their enterprises. So
we just had this Belit Onay one mayor in.
Yes. So the Turkish community is actually very successful, and for some parts of the German community, that's a problem, because they think that the native German community, whatever the native German is in their view, is losing ground, and they are trying to push back. And some of those fundamentalist, religious, or whatever you want to call, these radicals are trying to push back with violence. And I think that's the reason why we should take this threat very, very seriously.
Returning to DİTİB imams have been accused by Germany's government of spying for Turkey, which resulted in a temporary suspension of funding a couple years ago. Do you think Ankara has advised its imams in Germany and Austria to be on the lookout for followers of Fethullah Gülen, whom Turkey blames for the failed 2016 coup? Does Turkey use these mosques as intelligence gathering tools?
I'm pretty sure that there is some truth to that. First of all Turkish embassies in Germany are collecting information, how Turkey is represented in newspapers, from in governmental statements, and so on. And since the Diyanet is an institution which is governed by the Turkish government, so there is some truth of it that the imams they are sending to Germany somehow are reporting, or have the obligation to report what's going on in their mosque, what is what's going on in their communities, maybe in Berlin and so on. So there is a kind of I think there is a kind of truth to that, and they are also receiving their their Friday hutbas, the
sermons, yes.
Sermons from Turkey, and they are preaching them. And so, which means, there is a very strong connections, and I think there is a certain kind of, to a certain degree, it's totally understandable that they are reporting what's happening in Germany, because the Turkish government cares about its community in Germany. But if there is kind of spying, I can't really tell, but with regard to the Gülen movement, which is, or according to the Turkish government, which is responsible for the failed coup, that could be also true, that they are keeping a very close eye to their institution members and so on.
The German government has an issue with that. In the past year, it has repeatedly expressed a desire to eliminate or significantly reduce Turkish influence on its Muslim communities. And a couple weeks ago, it took a couple steps toward that goal. One new program will fund efforts at 50 mosques to increase local cohesion and boost integration, whatever that means exactly. In addition, the state provided startup funding for a domestic imam education program, with the view that it would eventually expand and eliminate the need for imams sent from Turkey. I'm wondering, how do you expect Turkish Germans to respond to these efforts? One analyst told me that he thought they might upset these communities, which might see these moves by the government as the state's attempt to control them.
First of all, that, and second, the German-trained imams, the institutions for Islamic religious studies created in Germany, in Tübingen, in Münster, they are still in the beginning of this process to train imams in Germany. So this is a development which takes time, but in Turkey, this development is somehow it's already finished. So people in Turkey are trained in the field of, Quranic texts,
So you're saying it's
hadith, and
reasonable
so
that
on,
Turkey
and then they are
sends
sent to
imams?
Europe. Yes.
So you're saying it's reasonable that Turkey sends imams?
I think until the German government has not a really good alternative, it is forced to use, any help it can get. So it is not a question of if it's good or not. It's a question of what kind of alternative can I give to my, Muslim community. And if I have no imams available, so I have to, find them outside my own country, so outside Germany.
Right. So the response of Germany is now the solution is to start training them domestically in Germany. But so how do you think? I mean, you said these Turkish communities in Germany have this connection still to their homeland. Part of that is their imam every week that they see giving this Friday sermon, and is always there at the mosque if they go. Taking that away, will that be problematic for some of these communities, do you think?
I don't think so, because the connection with Turkey, it's not only on the level of religion. The Turkish community is connected to Turkey through television, through internet, through other social, social interactions or social media. So that's not the only way of getting connected with. And because if you focus on the field of radicalization, some experts say it is important to have an imam which is critical on religious texts, which has a connection to the community, and which tries to keep them away, from getting radicalized. So I'm not sure that.
Ask you.
Yes.
Turkish Islam has for decades been seen as more moderate than like the strict Salafi interpretations pushed by countries like Saudi Arabia. Yet under the AKP, which many see as Islamist, many believe this has begun to change. Lorenzo Bedino, who's head of Georgetown University's program on extremism, told Ahval earlier this year that Turkey had become the world's leading supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, which some see as an extremist group. You've studied radicalization among Turkish communities in Germany and Austria. Has there been much radicalization among these communities? And if there has been, is it connected in any way to the AKP?
Turkish Islam is really, really connected to Turkish nationalism. So you have to keep that in mind. So Turkish nationalism and Islamism, they are going hand in hand. And Diyanet, or people from the Turkish religious directorate, they are, of course, supporting the Turkish government's political agenda. So when the AKP comes up with the political slogan, or with their political agenda, to destroy the Gülen movement, or that the Gülen movement is the biggest threat to Turkey, people will believe that, and the Diyanet is helping them, to send this message out to their followers and to those people who are joining the sermons at Friday. But you have to always, I think, you can combine the Turkish nationalist Islamist movement to the Wahhabi movement. It's a very different thing, because even if there is some kind of neo-Ottomanism in Erdogan's political agenda, to present the Turks as the real the Ottoman Empire as the only empire who created a ummah, the Islamic,
who united the Muslim world,
united, come up with a community. So these are simply political rhetoric, to challenge to the Saudi Arabia and other opponents of the Turkish government in this field. However, we do have a national Islamist connection in Turkey, which is radical in a point of from point of view against Jews, against Kurds, against Alavis, and so on. But I wouldn't go so far and would put it on the same level with the Wahhabi movement or Salafist movement or jihadist movement.
Right. So we haven't seen much extremism or jihadism among Turkish Germans or Turkish Austrians or even Turks in Turkey.
You have the movement of the Grey Wolves, Graue Wölfe, Bozkurt, they are radical and they were committing crimes on the European soil, but it is, from a political science point of view, they are focused on Turkey, on the territory. So for them, it's important to keep Turkey safe. They don't want to come up with a worldwide ummah and to convert all non-Muslims into Muslims and create a new Islamic state all over the world.
They don't have a religious element, really.
Yes, but from with a much stronger political agenda.
Mm-hmm. One reason European countries might be concerned about foreign influence within their domestic Muslim communities can be seen in the UK, where Muslim voters have the potential, according to reports, to determine as many as 31 seats in the upcoming parliamentary election. That's a lot. Do you see this as a possibility in Germany or in Austria, that the Muslim community, perhaps Turkish Muslim community, could tilt an election potentially in favor of candidates preferred by Turkey?
There are actually, I think, a couple of small parties which are once again. The situation is different from Great Britain simply because most of the Turkish people in Germany are organizing themselves politically in the CDU, in the CSU, in the Green Party or Socialist movement, the Socialist Party. So those who try to come up with a different party or challenge those bigger parties, they weren't very successful till yet. I mean, maybe they will be successful in the future, but right now I don't think that's a real option there.
I see. So Turkey, the Turkish government couldn't or doesn't have much reason to kind of push for a certain kind of vote in a German election, you're saying?
Well, I mean, they can. I mean, there are, of course, people in the German parties which are trying from Turkey. I mean, they can connect with people with Turkish backgrounds in the CDU, in the Green Party, in the SPD, and try to influence them and try to gain their support for their issues. But that's a normal thing. That's a usual thing countries do, to influence or to lobby for their interests.
Speaking of Turkish politicians, as I mentioned before, Belit Onay of the Greens Party won the Hanover mayoral election earlier this month, becoming the first Turkish origin German to lead a state capital in one of the country's major cities. One analyst told me his victory was a powerful symbol for the 3 million or so people of Turkish heritage in Germany. It meant they had arrived politically. Another told me that Onay's election was problematic for most German Turks who, like, for instance, Mesut Özil, tend to support Erdogan and stand against more liberal-minded figures like Onay. What's your view?
Maybe both is true, but first of all, once again, the Turkish community is arrived on a political stage long time ago. So, I mean, we have Cem Özdemir. There are many others in the CDU, CSU, and SPD, and so on.
But never led a major city. It's another step.
Yes, but but still, the people with Germans with Turkish migrant background, they were already in these fields, and they were trying to engage in different political fields, and this is that's a great success. Of course, I agree with that. But still, Turkish people or Germans with Turkish background, they were very much trying to get into German politics and to
they have had some success in the past.
Influence it. However, I mean, if there are people who are disappointed, could be the story of this football player Özil. That's a complicated thing. I mean, he was, I actually don't want to go into that, but I think that most of the people who are living in Germany with a Turkish background, I'm not sure if they are really have an opinion on that. If okay, I'm thinking too much in German. I'm trying to answer in English. So wait.
Opinion about what? About Erdogan?
No. Wait, let me start over. Okay. First of all, I think it's a great thing what happened in Hanover, but I'm not sure if there are these two blocks, people who are disappointed because this guy was elected there, or another block which is very, very happy that he was elected. But first of all, many Germans with a Turkish background are involved in German politics since the 1980s. So I think that's a logical outcome what happened in Hanover. It took a time, but it's a logical outcome because people with Turkish migrant background were engaging, very hard in this field. And now one of them was rewarded due to his hard work and so on.
Mm-hmm. You said you didn't want to go into the Mesut Özil thing, but I just wanted to say that thinking back to we discussed the bomb threat in Berlin just this week.
Yes.
I wonder if those two things are linked. Like when Mesut Özil resigned last year from the national team, he hinted at in his resignation racism among German people and their treatment of him. So I'm wondering if you think the treatment of Özil and like the bomb threats and this rising enmity towards Muslims in Germany is about a dislike for Muslims, for the unknown other in general, or is it about Turkey and Erdogan in particular and his policies?
Well, there was...
or is it maybe both of those things?
Well, there was clearly enmity against Turks or people from Turkey and Muslims before the AKP in Germany. So we have to keep that in mind. That's very important. I don't know what happened in the national football team with Özil. I mean, he might have faced racism. It's a complicated question. I can't really answer to that. I mean, Germany was. I don't know when was that was the World Cup, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mesut Özil was a key player in the World Cup.
Yes, it was the World Cup. I'm not a big fan of football. That's my problem. So I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Me neither.
So I mean, back then during the World Cup, Germany was not doing very good, and maybe people needed a scapegoat. So to a certain degree, Özil became a scapegoat, but then he went on and quit and married. And
well, I don't care about him so much. I just want your sense of what the enmity from Germans toward Turks toward Muslims is about. Is it more about Turkey, or is it more about just Muslims in general?
But then again, there was enmity against Turks before the AKP since the 1960s, since the first of them arrived in Germany. So it is simply. Or to put it simply, first, most of the racist people or people who are of racist or nationalist Germans, they simply don't see Turks or Muslims being part of the German society or being of the true native German society. So this is that's a political thing, And you can't really solve those kind of problems if someone is simply not accepting you as a person because you are not too white enough, not to because you have your hair has the wrong color and so on. But since the Turkish community, or since the Turkish community became more and more successful in Germany, in the field of economy, in the field of education, in the field of politics, of course, those resentments and those enmity grows, and it looks like that it was big, that it is bigger now than it was 10 years ago. But I'm not sure if this is true. I think that there is a constant enmity, that there was a constant enmity against Muslims or Turkish people, and we see it more often now because people can put it on through the social media and have more more tools, or they are more able to get a bigger attention than they could have 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
So you're saying the level of animosity may be the same, but it seems more present. It seems stronger because we come into contact with it so much more often now. Thanks for chatting with us today.